It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 31, looking at the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Mozambique. Part 1, the candidates. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 31 on the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode covers Mozambique's players. Just a note on where we're at in our media casts. We are publishing previews of the groups and teams for the 2025 African Cup at the same time as this series on the players. Last summer, we previewed the groups, teams, and players for the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup. We also did a media cast introducing ourselves. After this African Cup, we will tackle the massive 48-team World Cup in the summer of 2026. So keep an eye out for episodes. We plan to start publishing those in the springtime of 2026. We're doing this media cast in two parts. Part 1 here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of players in games over the recent period, as well as a couple of other factors, and categorize them into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and seemingly off the squad. And we'll go into more details on the players we think likely to reach the final squad, and less, perhaps even just the names of players unlikely to get there. Part 2 will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected, and that will be pretty soon because this is our last of the teams for Part 1. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we create here and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries, surprise selections, and predicted starters in Part 2. So this episode for Part 1 has 3 sections. In Section 1, we look at some general information on the team. Section 2 is our main business here. We cover the candidates in each position and their likelihood of selection. And then in Section 3, we summarize and conclude and focus on a couple of things like injuries and a quick review of what we covered in Section 2. All right, let's move on then to Section 1. And we're going to begin here with club affiliations. What kind of teams, what quality of teams do Mozambique players play for? Really, this is best done in comparison with the other teams in the group. So you see that Ivory Coast and Cameroon probably have more, they do have more players playing for bigger clubs there. But this is what we have for Mozambique. Domestic teams, about 50% or half of the players do play for players in Mozambique. Most of the club contributing the most players is Black Bulls, but we also have 2 of the fairly big teams there, UD Songo and Ferroviario de Beira. That's 50%. 10% with larger leagues in South Africa. Larger leagues in Africa. So that would be the South African League, and Angola also has a pretty healthy league there too. In Asia, we have 5% of players playing in Iraq and Libya. Then we look to small to mid-sized clubs in Europe. About 25% of the players are with that kind of club. So that might be clubs in Cyprus, Azerbaijan, or Scotland, or it might be smaller teams in larger leagues such as Germany and Italy. Both of those leagues have players from Mozambique among their 4th tier there. Next, we go to mid-sized clubs in Europe. That is about 8%. And the clubs represented there are Sunderland in England and CD Nacional and Santa Clara in Portugal. speaking of Portugal, about 70% of the players playing abroad do play in Portugal there. Finally, we have top clubs in Europe, really just the one Sporting Lisbon represented there. So that's what it looks like. 50% in domestic, that's the biggest category. Small to mid clubs in Europe, 25%. And then the others distributed among the other categories we mentioned. Okay, that is our look at club affiliations. Let's move on to our next order of business, recent games. So we're looking at the games in the build-up to the Cup here. We're going to start the narratives for each position with who played the positions in the 2023 African Cup there. But that's not part of the count for that we're using for participation over the period. That begins after the African Cup in March 2024, and our research goes until the end of October in 2025. In fact, the November games have been played, and we do know the results, but we're not looking at the lineups in part one here. We're going to save that for part two. So let's go through it. I want to just let you know that it is the same manager throughout the period. And the first thing we're looking at is the 2023 African Cup. There, they didn't pass the group stage, so just 3 games there. And despite being called the 2023 African Cup, it took place in January of 2024. And I will tell you that it was a bit of a B team, or at least some experimentation used for the third game in that cup, at least some changes from from the first 2 games in a couple of the positions there, and a bit of switching around as well. Many teams had friendlies in March of 2024, but Mozambique did not, so we don't have any games to look at there. So the first games of the period that we're using to examine their participation are in June of 2024. They're World Cup qualifying games for the 2026 World Cup. So 2 games there in June of 2024. Next, we move into the fall of 2024, and we have all 6 African Cup qualifying games for this tournament. So 2 in September, 2 in October, 2 in November there, and that completed qualification. Of course, Mozambique made it. That's why we're doing this media cast. Moving into 2025, we have 2 World Cup qualifiers in March of 2025. In June, though, there was no international duty. Most teams played 2 friendlies, Mozambique just the 1 here in June 2025. And finally, we have the end of 2026 World Cup qualifying, 4 games in September and October 2025. And again, the November or the games after that we'll talk about in part 2. That makes 15 games for Mozambique over the period. Let's look at the formations in those games next. We won't go through it in detail, but what we will do is look at just a kind of a summary of the formation. So what we have actually for Mozambique is pretty straightforward. That should be 13 out of the 15 games. Sorry, I just have to correct my graphic there. 13 out of the 15 games, or 87% of the games, were a 4-2-3-1 formation. So interestingly, we see them use 3 different formations in the African Cup. That's not part of the analysis here. In the June 2024 games, they used 2 separate formations, neither of them a 4-2-3-1. But after that, all of the games were a 4-2-3-1 formation. So very consistent, and consistency is the name of the game for Mozambique here. We're going to see that in section 2 quite a bit. A bit more analysis. We have a 2-man central defense in all of the games, 100% of the games. So they never use a 3-man central defense during this period. They did in the African Cup, but again, that's not part of our analysis here. Furthermore, a two-man central midfield in 87% of the games. It was a three-man central midfield in two of the games, or 13% of them. And a single forward, also 100% of the games. It's just a single forward. They never used a two-man forward line during this period. Well, the next section is called upcoming games, but in fact, those games have already been played. We had a friendly on November 14th. That was played in Morocco, and it was against Morocco. We're not really interested in the results. We're interested in the lineups, but they did lose that game 1-0. 3 days later, they played Chad, also in Morocco, and that was a 2-2 draw. There. So we're going to look at the lineups for those games in part 2. And that brings us to the end of part 1. So we're going to move on to section 2. Yes, I'm calling these sections, not parts. Parts are different podcasts or mediacasts completely. So that is it for section 1. We move on to section 2 and start our look at the players. We begin with the manager here. I'm just going to put one name on the list, though. It's Chiquino Conde. And we're not going to go back further than that in terms of looking at the managers. And that's because he's been in charge since 2021. So has been in charge for quite a while now. Chiquino Conde, an ex-player, actually. He came in just after an uninspired World Cup 2022 qualifying campaign where they had struggled with Malawi at the bottom of the table. And also, just before he came in, they had played the first 2 games of 2023 African Cup qualifying, which had actually started reasonably well. It was a home draw with Rwanda, which was a bit disappointing, but a win in Benin, which was a good result. So he took them forward from there and guided them to a successful qualification for the 2023 African Cup. They did lose their 2 games to Senegal, which is no surprise, but they did win both of the reverse fixtures with those 2 teams, Benin and Rwanda. Sorry, I had to pause to cough there. So they reached the tournament, and that was their first appearance at the tournament since 2010. So a big success for them there. And in the tournament, they performed well in a very tough group, actually. They tied Egypt and Ghana. The middle game was a bit disappointing. It was a 3-0 loss to Cape Verde. But the performance was certainly better than the result because they did finish last in the group. Nevertheless, some of their performances were pretty memorable, especially against Egypt in a 2-2 draw there. Conde led them to a second qualification in a row for the 2025 African Cup here. They finished second in the qualifying group, well ahead of Guinea-Bissau. And Guinea-Bissau was a team that had reached the last 4 cups in a row. That campaign had also seen them earn a draw away in Mali. Mali, the first place finisher in that group. So it was a good qualifying campaign. The 2026 World Cup qualifying campaign was also quite solid. They came third in a group of 6, but they were tied on points with second place Uganda there. So Chiquino Conde has done well, and we will take a look at him in his kind of career biography here. Conde was a player for Mozambique, in fact, captain of the team, over 15 years from 1986 to 2001, and he earned 43 caps and 12 goals. He played his club soccer mostly in Portugal with several teams, but did spend a bit of time around 1997 in the USA, playing for a couple of teams there. His biggest team was Sporting Lisbon. who he was with from 1994 to 95, and he participated in two African Cups in 1996 and 1998, so actually led them through a good period of their history there. He's been manager of Mozambique since 2021 and has managed clubs in Portugal and in mostly in Mozambique there. In Portugal, the only team he managed was just before becoming the manager of Mozambique. It was Vitória Setubal's under-23 team from 2018 to 20. So that's it, his success there in the African Cup 2023, at least a success in terms of performance. And he will be hoping to get a bit of a better result this time. But a tough group again, probably even tougher than last time, truth be told. Let's move on to goalkeepers. And we're going to begin by naming the candidates here, just giving you the cast of characters before we give a narrative or the story of the position over the period that we're looking at. And I'm going to try something a little different in this tournament because I'm hoping to employ it for the World Cup teams in the next World Cup. I'm going to just give details on the definite and likely candidates, and below that level, for the most part, we'll just give the names. And then in part two, if those players are named for the tournament, then we will give a bit more biographical or career information on those players. And part of the reason for doing that is because generally it's only like 10 to 20% of the possible candidates or below who make it to the squad. And even those players are usually on the bench. So I think what people want to know about really is more the key players there. So we begin with two definite candidates as goalkeeper. We have Hernan Siluane as a definite candidate, and Ivane Urubal. There, Mozambique players may be known by their first or second name. It's a bit of it's a bit random, and you kind of have to get to know them individually. But I have heard Hernan called both Hernan and Siluane, so I'm not too sure about that. Anyway, for a possible candidate, we have Kimis. His actual name is Kimison Zavala, but he's generally known as Kimis. And then seemingly off the squad, we have Fazito there. Okay, and Fazito was the one of the backup keepers in the last African Cup there. Okay, let's take a look at the story over the period then. In the African Cup, it was Hernan Siluane who started the first two games, but he was replaced in game 3 by Ivane Urubal there, and that's not the only time we see that where a change is made in the third game there. Over the period, though, it was Siluane retaining his starting position and starting 12 of their 15 games. And he was actually on the bench for 2 of those games as well. Ivane Urubal replaced him for all 3 of the games, and Urubal was on the bench for all other games. Fazito was the third string keeper in the cup. He was not selected. Though, for the June 2024 World Cup qualifiers, but came back for all 6 of the African Cup qualifiers in the fall of 2024. However, after that, Kimis was recalled after an almost 3-year absence from the team, and he had played those June 2024 games. From 2025 onwards, he was the third choice selection on the bench there for all games. So Fazito left out in the cold in 2025. It's minus 24 degrees Celsius in Edmonton at the time that I'm doing this media cast. So it's going down to minus 32 Celsius overnight. So it's hard not to use these weather analogies here. Okay, that's it for goalkeepers. So let's take a look at the 2 main candidates, Hernan Siluane. They did share duties in the last African Cup and may do so again here, although Silouane does look like a clear starter. Been with Mozambique since 2021 and has 42 caps for the team. He's 27 years old, one of several players playing for Black Bulls Maputo in Mozambique, and has played for a few teams in Mozambique. And as we saw, was a starter in the African Cup there for the first two games, but lost his position for the last game. Or maybe losing his position is putting it a bit too harshly, but didn't play the third game there. The player who did play the third game was our next candidate, Yvain Urubal. He's been with Mozambique since 2022. For him, though, just 13 caps, and he is 28 years old. He plays for UD Songo, another one of the bigger teams in Mozambique there, but he did play for Black Bulls for 5 years prior to 2024 when he moved to UD Songo. As we saw, he was the second string keeper in the African Cup and did play game 3. And we also saw in the narrative that he started 3 of their 15 games over this period and was on the bench for all 12 others. Now, the other players we're just going to leave as names. Kimis, the 21-year-old, and Fazito, still very young. He's just 22 years old, so there is a chance of him coming back into the team. But Fazito last appeared on the bench in November of 2024, so it does look like Kimis is the third string keeper here. Let's go to defenders and look at the list of players here. We do have Nene, who is coded as a central defender. He did play one game in central defense, but mostly played in the midfield. So we're going to move Nene, or we have moved Nene to defensive midfield, and we'll talk about him there. So our first candidate is Fernando Chamboko, and he is at the likely level. The fact that his name is in light grey indicates that he has not been through a tournament. If it's in black, like Mexer here, our second likely candidate, that means he has been through a tournament. So there we go. And then, so Chamboko and Mexer are likely candidates. We have 2 possible candidates in Edmilson Dove and Francisco Chico Muchanga. And then 2 players seemingly off the squad, David Malambana and Martinho. Okay, those are the candidates. Let's talk about the position. It was likely candidate Mexer and possible candidate Edmilson Dove starting the first 2 games of the previous African Cup. In the third game, they were joined in a 3-man defence by left back Reynaldo Mandava. That was in game 2. They were joined in a 3-man defence. In game 3, it went back to a 2-man defence, but Reynaldo replaced Edmilson Dove for that game. And going forward, Dove started only once over the period, and that was as a left back. So he's kind of out of the picture going forward. It's Mexer and Reynaldo partnering in central defence through most of the games over the past 2 years. Reynaldo missed only 1 game, but the aging Mexer missed 5 games. Players in single appearances replaced Mexer in the first 2 games, but it was Fernando Chamboko replacing him for the other 3, and he also replaced Reynaldo in the only game that he missed. So there we have it. Let's take a look then at some of the candidates. We do have, I don't know why we have Chamboko. I'm going to put Mexer ahead of Chamboko because Mexer is more of a starter. I said he was a bit of an aging player, though. He is 37 years old, so this will probably be his last tournament. He's been with Mozambique since 2007 and has 76 caps and 3 goals, and currently playing for smaller teams in Europe. two small teams, I should say, in Turkey since 2023. But in the past, he played for a couple of bigger teams, Bordeaux in France and Nacional in Portugal, and even Sporting Lisbon in Portugal there, although he was loaned out for the 2 years that he was there. He was a starter Mexer, and I should say his actual name is Edson Andre Cito, or Edson Cito, and he may be listed as Edson Mexer. And that should be pronounced Mesha. So I'll pronounce it Mesha from now on. Starter in the 2010 African Cup, and then started and finished all 3 games in the 2023 African Cup. Over the recent period, Mesher has started 10 of their 15 games, and 5 games, as we saw in the narrative, that he was not selected for. The second the second likely candidate then is Fernando Chamboco. He's been with Mozambique since 2023, just 9 caps for him, and 27 years old. He plays for Black Bulls in Mozambique, but has played in Portugal prior to that. He was on the preliminary squad there, the 46-man preliminary squad for the 2023 African Cup, but didn't make the final cut. So he was one of the names in the previous media cast we did going into that tournament. He returned, Chamboco, after an 11-month absence in October of 2024, and started 4 of their remaining 11 games, as well as subbing in for 2 and on the bench for 5 others. So he's been called up pretty regularly, and is a backup for this position, as we saw in the narrative. Edmilson Dove is a possible candidate, so is Francisco Muchanga or Chico Muchanga. We won't go into detail on those unless they're selected. And David Malambana is the first of our seemingly off the squad candidates. He was part of the squad for the 2023 African Cup, just on the bench there, and last appeared in September of 2024. Martinho last appeared in November of 2024. Okay, let's go to the left back position here, and we have a definite candidate in Bruno Langa, and also a definite candidate in Reynaldo Mandava. I actually should have moved him to centre back, because that's a position he played in during this period, but he is coded as a left back, and he does play left back for his club. Besides those 2 definite candidates, we only have one player at the possible but unlikely level here. That's Danilo Muse, and so we'll take a quick look at him after we look at the summary. So Reynaldo Mandava started as a right back in the as a left back in the first game of the Cup, but as we saw, he moved to central defence for the last 2 games, and not only that, but for all of the games during the period that we're looking at. So in his absence, Bruno Langa came into the position, for the last 2 games of the Cup, and for all of the games except one over the period we're looking at. Interestingly, he missed the one game that Reynaldo missed, both of them absent in June of 2025. Central defender Edmilson Dove replaced him for the one game he missed. That was Dove's only start over the period. All right, now let's look at the candidates then. Bruno Langa has been with Mozambique since 2016. He has 38 caps and 2 goals and is 28 years old. He's playing for Almeria in Spain since 2024, but is actually on loan to Paphos in Cyprus currently. And he played for Chaves in Portugal for 3 years before that. So has been playing in Portugal since 2019, after he moved for Mozambique. He was part of the African Cup. I won't repeat what we said because we covered it in the narrative. Over the recent period, Bruno Langa has started 14 of their 15 games, and the other one not selected for. He scored a goal in qualifying as well. So has 2 goals in his career. Reinildo Mandava, though a much bigger name than Bruno Langa, he's been with Mozambique since 2013, has 53 caps and 5 goals, and is 31 years old. Recently moved from Atletico Madrid in Spain, where he was for 3 years. In the summer of 2025, moved to Sunderland in England. They had been promoted to the Premier League and did a lot of buying. I think they made a good purchase getting Reinaldo there. And prior to Atletico Madrid, he had played for 3 years with Lille in France. Reinildo Mandava. Then the only tournament was the 2023 African Cup. Started and finished all 3 games, once as a left back, twice as a central defender, and over the recent period has started 14 of their 15 games, just missing that one in June of 2025. So both of those, Bruno Langa, Reinildo Mandava, definite candidates. At the possible level, we have Danilo Muz. He actually does have 33 caps for the national team, but was not selected for the last 4 matches and didn't start any games, just subbed in for 1 there. So possible but unlikely Danilo Muz. Let's move on to the right back position. And here we have Infran Matola, also known as Nanani, and I hear that name more than Infran Matola, so I'm going to go with Nanani. I think in the previous mediacast we got confused because we thought they were 2 separate players, but we won't make that mistake here. He is a definite candidate, and then we have 2 candidates at the possible level. There we have Domingos Macanza and Diogo Kalila, both at the possible level there. And then seemingly off the squad, Oscar Shireen. Let's go to the narrative then. So Domingos Macanza started the first 2 games of the Cup, and Nanani got the nod for the 3rd game there, and it remained a rotation going into 2024. But in the fall of 2024, Nanani increasingly took over the position. In the fall of 2025, though, newcomer Diogo Kalila was immediately inserted into the position and started the first 3 of the fall 2024. The first 3 of the 4 fall World Cup qualifiers there in the fall of 2025. Nanani did return to start the last one, while Domingos was not called up for the games. So that made it a little difficult for us to know when players come in at the end like that, whether that is a permanent change or whether they're just being kind of tried out for the squad here. But we will look closely at Nanani here, since he's a definite candidate. He's been with Mozambique since 2018 with 40 caps and no goals. He's 29 years old and has played his career in Mozambique, currently with UD Songo there since 2019. He was selected, as we saw, for the 2023 African Cup, and he subbed into Game 2 as well as started and finished Game 3. Over this period, Nanani has started 9 of their 15 games, subbed in for 4, so just 2 matches that he was not selected for, and we consider him a definite candidate. I wonder if we should put Diogo Kalili ahead of Macanza here, because he does seem more likely starting 3 of the last 4 games, but we won't go into detail on either of them. Again, we'll come back and detail them if they are selected for the squad. And I'm presuming that one of them will be One of them will be, but we're not sure which one. Let's just quickly look at possible but unlikely Oscar Shireen. His name is in orange, meaning that he's come into the team during this recent period. He did come in right at the end there in September 2025, was on the bench for one match and then not selected for the last three. So just popped his head in briefly there. Oscar Shireen. Let's move on to the midfield. We're finished with the defense. And we're going to begin with the defensive end of the midfield. We're going to cover defensive midfielders and central midfielders in one go here. Really, there's not much of a distinction between them. I'll just remind you what we said in section 1, that despite 3 different formations in the Cup in January of 2024, it was a 2-man midfield in almost every game going forward. So March 2024 was a 3-man midfield in both of those games. Sorry, that should be June 2024. But all games after that were a 4-2-3-1. So that's 2 midfielders, and it suggests defensive midfielders. But in truth, it could easily be a central midfielder playing it. And in fact, it is in the case of one of the players. Nevertheless, most of our candidates are coded as defensive midfielders. Our first one is actually coded as a central defender. That's the player we mentioned earlier, Nene, who did play one game in central defence, but has mostly been in a defensive midfielder position during this period. So Nene is at the definite level. At the likely level, we have Guima. His actual name is Ricardo Martin Guimares, but he is commonly known as Guima. And then we have 2 players at the possible level, Amadou and Manuel Kambala. 4 players at the possible level. The other 2 are Shaquille and Keynes Abdallah. So both of those appearing enough during the period to for us to consider them possible candidates, but perhaps not Ali Abudo, who we have at the possible but unlikely level. So those are the candidates coded as defensive midfielders. We're going to just add one more because we only have one coded as a central midfielder, and that's Alphonse Amade, but he is a definite candidate there. Right, let's go to our narrative and see how it's played out over this period. Guima and Alphonse Amade were the pairing in the first 2 games of the Cup, and in fact, despite the 3 formations in the Cup, it was a 2-man midfield in each of those games anyway. So Guima and Alphonse Amade in the first 2 games. In the third game, central defender Nene replaced Guima, but Guima was still on the field. He moved up to play as a central attacking midfielder there. Guima and Amade were again the pairing in the June 2024 World Cup qualifiers, but it was a 3-man midfield formation for those 2 games, and attacking midfielder Dominguez Palembe joined them. He played as a right midfielder in the first of those June games, while central defender Nene became a defensive midfielder from that point on. And in that game, the second in June 2024, played a central role in the center role in the 3-man midfielder, a central midfielder, let's say. From June 2025, it became a rotation, and I think that's June 2024, or after that June game, going into the fall games in 2024. It was a rotation of Guima, Amade, and Nene. Guima did drop off a bit towards the end. He started only 2 of the last games, and in one of those he was once again a central attacking midfielder, as he had been in the Cup. So that left Amade and Nene as the pairing for the last 3 games. So that's what it seems like going forward. We will look at the November games to see if that remains the same. But anyway, simple enough there. Really just those three players occupying the position. Let's take a look at them in more detail then, beginning with Nene, coded as a central defender. Maybe we'll have to review his coding going forward if he does become a midfielder. He actually has Nene 2, Nene the second on the back of his shirt in the last African Cup there. He's been with Mozambique since 2017 with 46 caps and 1 goal, and he's 29 years old, and he's currently playing for a team in Libya, not even one of the bigger teams in Libya since 2025. It's Abu Salim. And prior to that, he was with Black Bulls Maputo there in Mozambique. As we saw, he was part of the African Cup squad there. He did sub into game 1, and then we saw him start in game 3. I thought he was in game 2. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He was more a starter over this period, though. He started 11 of their 15 games here, and he was subbed in for the 4 others. So that's why we have Nene as a definite candidate. The likely candidate is Guima. He's fairly new to the team since 2023 with 21 caps and 2 goals, but he is 30 years old, so joined the team a little bit late there. He has a long resume of clubs, currently with Zira in Azerbaijan since 2025, was with a small team in Turkey before that, and but he also was with Sporting Lisbon, Sporting Lisbon's B team from 2016 to 2019. And his clubs were mostly in Portugal. Only recently in 2019 did he move to Poland and then on to Turkey and Azerbaijan eventually. He was born in Portugal, Guima, and as we saw, started all 3 games in the cup there, the last cup. He started 10 of their 15 games over this period. However, he was not selected for 5 games, including the last 2 matches. So drifted off the team, as we said in the narrative, a little bit towards the end. Let's look at the possible candidates. So the first one, Amadou, 33 caps for the national team, but just started 1 game over this period. He was on the bench for the last African Cup, subbed briefly into game 1 there. Next, we have Manuel Kambala, 43 caps for the national team, but was not selected for the 2023 African Cup, and he also started 1 game over this period. Shaquille, 44 caps. So these players have a lot of caps for Mozambique. He's been with them since 2021, and he was part of the African Cup squad in 2023. He subbed into games 2 and 3, but didn't start any games over this period, just subbed into 4, and also off the team for the last 4 matches, Shaquille. And finally, Keynes Abdallah, 22 years old and no caps for the national team. But he was on the bench for the last 4 matches, so making a bit of a comeback into the team because he was selected for the preliminary squad for the previous African Cup. Finally, we have Ali Abdullo at the possible but unlikely level, and he started none of their games, just subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 4. Not selected for the last 4 matches. So Ali Abudo, I should say, an unlikely candidate here. And then we'll go to the player coded as a definite candidate. I see I've gummed up my graphics here, putting players in the wrong spot. So I'm just talking while I fix that. But the player we are going to look at is Alphonse Amade. And he's been with Mozambique just since 2024 with 18 caps. That can't be right. Anyway, I'll get to the bottom of it. It must be since 2023. He has 18 caps and 2 goals for the national team and is 26 years old. And he plays in Scotland, not for one of the biggest teams in Scotland, Dunfermline in Scotland, and he's played in Bulgaria, Belgium, and especially Germany because he was born in Germany and even played for German underage teams there. That been with the team since 2024 is obviously wrong because he was a starter in the last African Cup there. Started all 3 games there, but he had been new to the squad, actually had not appeared before being named to the preliminary squad there, so we're not too far off there. Alphonse Amade started 10 of their 15 games over this period, subbed in for 2 and not selected for 3 others, so we consider him a definite candidate. So there's the central midfield for you. Tends to be Amade and Nene, and we'll see in November if Guima continues to slide off the squad there. But I think he's a likely candidate for the Cup as we've coded him. Let's move on upfield then. We have no candidates coded as left and right midfielders. Most teams don't anymore. So we're moving up to attacking midfielders, and we're looking at the left attacking end of the field. Now, since they always use a 4-2-3-1 formation, or almost always, we're mostly looking at a left attacking and right attacking midfielder position here. But in the narrative, we'll see that it was a bit different in the Cup. Let's look at the candidates. We have a definite candidate in Gildo Vilanculos. But he was referred to as just Gildo in the Cup, so I'm going to call him Gildo. We also have Wheaty. Gildo is a definite candidate there. We also have Wheaty, and that's spelled W-I-T-I. I paid attention to his pronunciation during the Cup, though, and it seemed to be Wheaty. He's a likely candidate, and so is the only other candidate we have here, Clesio Bok. Clesio Bok, or often just known simply as Clesio. Those are the only 3 candidates here. Let's look at the story of the position then. Clesio Bok was one of the few predictions we made as a starter going into the last Cup. Generally, players were in and out so much, or else shifting positions so much, that we didn't make many predictions in that media cast. Ironically, one of the few predictions we did make turned out to be completely wrong. Despite starting all 4 games in the lead up to the Cup, Clesio Bok didn't start. It was Gildo, who's actually coded as a right attacking midfielder. Gildo started game 1. In that game, it was a 4-4-1-1 formation, so he was a left attacking winger. And in the games 2 and 3, Wheaty came in, starting the next 2 as a left attacking midfielder there. Going into the period we're examining, though, from June of 2024, it was a rotation of the 3 of them, and actually distributed fairly evenly throughout the period. The only pattern we could discern there was that Clesio was starting a bit less towards the end, and Wheaty starting a little bit more. Otherwise, a rotation of the 3 players. Let's take a look at the 3 players. So Gildo, or Gildo Vilanculos, has been with Mozambique since 2015 with 50 caps and 3 goals, and he is 30 years old. He's playing for a team in Lebanon, Tadamon Saur in Lebanon, and was in Saudi Arabia earlier this year. He moved from Portuguese clubs. Academica in Portugal was the one before, but he's been with several clubs in Portugal there. And as we saw, a starter, at least in game one of the African Cup, but then lost his position for games 2 and 3. Over this period, he has started 6 of their 15 games, and I'll say that it's pretty much the same for all 3 of these players, starting about a third of the games there, 6 of the games for him, but he did sub in for 7, so just 2 matches that Gildo was not called up for. So a definite candidate. Wheaty has been with Mozambique also since 2015, and almost exactly the same number of caps, 51 for him and 5 goals. That compares to 50 and 3 goals for Gildo. And he's a year younger, Wheaty, 29 years old. He plays for Nacional in Portugal since 2025. That's his second stint with them. Actually, he played with them for a long time before, from 2015 to 24. In between, he played for 2 teams in the UAE. Okay, and as we saw, he started all 3 games there. We saw him starting games 2 and 3 as a left attacking midfielder, but he actually lined up as a right attacking winger in game 1. We'll see why he was on the right side when we get to the next position. And over the period, he started 6 of their 15 games, subbed in for 4, but in his case, he was not selected for 5 of the matches, so we have him moved down to a likely candidate. Finally, Clasio Borg, a bit older and more caps than the other 2. He's been there since 2011 with 62 caps and 9 goals, and is slightly older at 31 years old. And he's currently back in Mozambique with Black Bulls, but he did play out of country for a while in UAE, Azerbaijan, Finland, and yes, quite a passport with a lot of stamps there. He also played in Turkey as well. The 2023 African Cup, he appeared only in game 1. He was subbed in at halftime there, but he pulled up clutching his thigh at the very end of that game. So but despite being on the bench for games 2 and 3, he might have been injured there. And over this period, Clasio Borg started 4 of their 15 games, as well as subbing in for 8. And he was on the bench for 1 and not selected for 2 others. So actually pretty close to definite there. And I think all 3 of these candidates will make it, especially since they're the only ones here. There's no candidates below their level kind of threatening to take their place. So that's it for the left attackers. Let's move on over to the right side. And here we have a definite candidate in Jenny Katomo. We did move Gildo Valancoulos over to the left side because he played more over there. But we have a possible candidate on this side, newcomer Angelo Thomas Cantolo. And hello, Thomas Cantolo at the possible level. And then 2 candidates seemingly off the squad, Dario Chonge and Jonathan Muiomo. And then 1 at the seemingly off the squad level, veteran Talinho. Actual name is Stelio Marcelino Ernesto, but he's known as Talinho. Okay, the situation is pretty simple on this side of the field. It is Jenny Katomo all the way. He was on the bench in the opening game of the 2023 African Cup, despite being their highest profile player here. He's with Sporting Lisbon, as we'll see. He had been out with injury for the November games prior to the Cup and didn't appear in the pre-tournament friendlies, so we presume he was still recovering for game 1 of the Cup. He was replaced by Gildo for that game, but then he started games 2 and 3, and over the period he's kept a very firm grasp on the position. He only missed 1 game, and it was Gildo replacing him in that game as well. Let's take a closer look at Jenny Katamo. He's been with Mozambique since 2009 with 38 caps and 11 goals and is just 24 years old. playing for Sporting Lisbon in Portugal since 2021, although he was loaned out during that period. And has been with a couple of teams in Portugal before that, but he did play his youth soccer in Mozambique there. And so, yes, part of the African Cup. Made a very good impression in that African Cup there, as several of the players did. And scored 2 of their goals in qualifying for this cup, 2 of their 9 goals there. He got their only goal in their opening game, which was a tie in Mali. So that tournament or that campaign started off well for them because of his goal. He also scored 3 of their 14 goals in World Cup 2026 qualifying, including a late winning goal on a penalty against Guinea, and he also scored against Algeria, so he has no fear of scoring against bigger teams. Jenny started 13 of their 15 games over this period, and so he's a definite candidate. I have him not selected for the one other, but there should be 2 others, so I'll have to review that. But anyway, that's pretty clear. That he's a definite candidate. Next, we'll go to the possible candidate, Angelo Thomas Cantolo. And he's new to the team, just 22 years old. We'll tell you more about him if he makes the final squad. Dario Chongai, seemingly off the squad here. Was off the team for a while and came back just for one appearance on the bench there, and then not selected for the last 4 matches. Jonathan Muyomo was born in Germany and plays in Germany, and similarly came into the team and started one of their games over the period, so he was there since the beginning. He's been on the team since 2023. Subbed in for 1, started 1, and not selected for 10 matches, including the last 4. So I made more of a meal of that than I intended to. Finally, we have Tolinho, a veteran for the team, 61 caps between 2011 and 2023, but last appeared in the in 2023 there, so I don't have any information on him for this cup. So Tolinho probably shouldn't actually be in our list here if he last played in 2023. That's it for right attackers. Let's move on to central attackers then. And we have a no definite candidate here, but a likely candidate in newcomer Pepo or Pepo Santos. And then at the possible level, we have João Bonde. And at the seemingly, not seemingly off the squad, possible but unlikely Dominguez or Dominguez Palembe or Elias Palembe, you may sometimes see. We're just going to call him Dominguez. That seems to be most common name. And a true veteran, we will spend a bit of time looking at him because he's a big player for the club or was. Let's look at the central attacking position. For a lot of teams, this is just used in a few games, but for Mozambique, it was used quite a lot, as we saw them using a 4-2-3-1 formation for all games from September 2024 onwards. So that 4-2-3-1 formation does call for this position. And yes, we might as well say here that Dominguez Palembe played as a secondary striker in one of the games of the previous cup. That was a 4-1-4-1 formation, but a similar position to a central attacking midfielder. I'm just looking at game 1 here. In game 3, they used a double central attacking midfielder, but we treated that just as a left and right attacking midfielder, since it was those players in those positions. I'm just looking to see if Palembe started the first game. So that game he did start the 4-4-1 formation was the first game, and then he didn't start either of the games after that. Anyway, going forward, the position, as we said, was used a lot, but it was newcomer Pepo Santos. He played the first and the last of the 6 African Cup qualifiers there in the fall of 2024, but Domingos Palembe continued with the team despite his age and played the middle 4 games of that. However, in 2025, it was almost solely Pepo Santos. Palembe was off the squad for 2025, and we presume moving into international retirement. Okay, we'll talk about that a bit more when we get to it, but Pepo Santos, the main candidate now, and he's been with Mozambique since 2024 with 12 caps and 2 goals, 31 years old despite being very new to the team. He was born in Portugal, so perhaps he was hoping to join Portugal's team. There has played for fairly small teams in Portugal, though, so his chances looked fairly small of making Portugal. But now here he is with Mozambique, getting his first appearance on the bench in June of 2024, right at the beginning of the period, but starting 7 of their remaining 15 games, as well as subbing in for 4 and being on the bench for 2. So just 2 matches that Pepo Santos was not selected for. So we have him as a likely candidate. The possible candidate, João Bondi, was part of the squad for the 2023 African Cup. And again, we won't go into the reasons why he's a possible candidate, but we will tell you if he makes the final squad. We will spend a bit more time, though, on Domingos Palembe. In the narrative there, I said that looked like he was going into retirement because he's 41 years old and been with Mozambique since 2004 with 119 caps and 17 goals. He's back playing in Mozambique with UD Songo since 2023, but was mostly in South Africa and with some of their biggest teams as well, Bidvest Wits in South Africa and Mamelodi Sundowns. Both of those he was with for more than 5 years, and then with Supersport, his first club in South Africa. He was part of the 2010 African Cup. He started and finished all 3 games there, has been a consistent scorer in their qualifying campaigns between then and now, and here he was back for the African Cup as captain in 2023, but he only started game 1, subbed out at halftime there, and was just used as a substitute in the following 2 games. Now, I did say, okay, well, we'll just give the participation here. He started 5 of their 15 games over the period, as well as subbing in for 2, but he was not selected for the last 7 matches or all of the matches in 2025. So I said I presumed that he was, aging out, retiring from the squad. However, I do see that he has been called up again for the November game. So we'll have to update or kind of tell you that story in part 2, because we're honestly a bit confused by that. I mean, it makes sense he would be going into retirement, but then it seems like he's not. So we're a bit confused. Okay, we'll wait for part 2 for the end of that story. Let's go on to the forwards here. So we have no players coded as secondary strikers. So just centre forwards here. We have a definite candidate in Stanley Ratifo. And then we go down to the likely level where we find 2 candidates, Faisal Bangal and Melki. Melki's actual name is Melki Melito Alexander Garcia there, and sometimes he's known as Melki Garcia or Melki Alexander. It's a bit difficult because the websites disagree. Beyond those 2 possible candidates, we have 2 possible but unlikely candidates. That is Deo Antonio and Elias McCamel. And finally, we have Lau King, who does feature in our narrative here, but it's seemingly off the squad. let's go to that narrative and see how the position has played out over the past couple of years. Stanley Rafito started the first 2 games of the Cup, but Lau King got the start in Game 3 there. However, Stanley Rafito basically owned the position going forward. He missed just 2 of the 13 games over the period, and even those 2 he subbed into. In the first game that he was not the starter, it was left attacking midfielder Clesio Bok starting that one. And in the second game, Faisal Bangal, one of our possible candidates here, who got the start there. Lau King, who we saw start in Game 3 of the Cup, is off the squad, having last appeared in June of 2024. Okay, so the only player we'll really closely examine here is Stanley Rafito, really a fixture up front there. He's been with Mozambique since 2017 and has 46 caps and 9 goals. He's 31 years old, and he plays for Chemie Leipzig. That's not the big Leipzig team, but in Germany since 2024. He's played for fairly small clubs in Germany throughout his career. The biggest was probably FC Cologne, but that was their B team there. He was born in Germany, and as we saw, was starter in the first 2 games of the African Cup there. Again, some changes being made, so we don't know if they were dissatisfied with him or just giving King Lau a chance to get on the field there. Anyway, over the recent period, no one has gotten on the field, really. He started 13 of their 15 games in the position, so he owns it, subbing in for the other 2. The first of our 2 candidates, though, did get on the field for 1 game. It was Faisal Bangal, but just a possible candidate here will give you more information. I'll just tell you that he was injured for the 2023 African Cup, so whatever chance he had there were precluded because of his injury. Melky, on the other hand, was on the preliminary squad for the last African Cup, but didn't make the final cut. He has 30 caps and 4 goals for the national team, but has not played much over this period. No starts and subbed in twice. There, but a possible candidate anyway. Possible but unlikely, Deo Antonio. No starts over the period, just appeared once as a sub and not selected for 12 matches, including the last 4. And the other one is a newcomer, actually, Elias Macamo, despite being 31 years old. No, he's not a newcomer. He's been around since 2016, so his name should be in grey there. Anyway, he returned after an almost 8-year absence. It's no wonder I thought he was new. Returned after an 8-year absence and subbed in for 6 games, actually, but not selected for the last 4 matches. So Elias Macamo, possible, but unlikely. And then seemingly off the squad, Lau King. We saw that he was part of the squad for the last African Cup and started a game. And we already said that he last appeared in June of 2024. So that is it for the forwards, and that's it for Section 2. We've looked at all positions now, and we're ready to move on to Section 3. In Section 3, we want to welcome new listeners because we're releasing this as a short version of Part 1 on Mozambique's players. In the full version, we did introduce the candidates, their likelihood of making the squad, the reasons why we put them in the likelihood level that we did, and some biographical or career information on the main players there. So if you want those details to get to know the players better, that's the full media cast is what you would want to listen to. Otherwise, this is just a quick summary of what we talked about mostly in Section 2, and we're not concerning ourselves with predicting starters at this point. We're going to do that in Part 2 of the media cast. So let's take a look at what we got. We got manager Chiquino Conde. He's been there since 2021, so long-term manager for them and doing quite well. For goalkeepers, we have 2 definite candidates, Hernan Siluane and Yvain Urubal. No candidates at the likely level, but at the possible level, we have Kimmich. So probably all three of those will make it because they'll bring three. Some teams even bring four to the Cup. For defenders in central defence, we have no candidates at the definite level, but likely Mesher is there and Fernando Chamboko. Both of those likely, and two candidates at the possible level, Edmilson Dove and Francisco Chico Muchenga. And we should put on left back Reynaldo or Reynaldo Mandava because he's been playing in central defence. But because he's coded as a left back and we know he plays that for his club team, we've left him with his coded position in left back, which is what we go to next anyway. But two definite candidates there. Bruno Langa has been playing as the left back while Reynaldo has been in central defence. But anyway, both of them are definite candidates here, Bruno Lango and Reynaldo Mandava, and there are no candidates below that level. Any candidates at the possible but unlikely level or below, we're not going to mention in order to keep it simple. So we do have one at the possible but unlikely level, but we're not going to mention them. For right backs, we have a definite candidate in Nanani, but we've seen him go by the name Infran Matola as well, but we're using Nanani. He's a definite candidate. No candidates at the likely level, but two at the possible level. Diogo Kalila, he's a newcomer. That's why his name is in orange on the YouTube here. And then possible candidate Domingos Mancanza. His name is in black script. That means he has been through a tournament there. So that's it for the defense. Let's go to the midfield, or the central or defensive end of the midfield. And we have, I didn't fix up my graphics here. Yikes. Okay, it doesn't actually matter because we're only interested in the definite, likely, or possible candidates. We have a number of players seemingly off the squad there. Anyway, defensive midfielders, we have Nene. He's actually a central defender, or coded as a central defender. During this period, though, he's been playing much more as a defensive midfielder. We also have likely candidate Guima. And that's it for defensive midfielders. But for central midfielders, we have Alphonse Amade. So the fact that we only have three players covering the position should tell you how tight this squad is. It's really a similar starting lineup every time, which we'll talk about in the comments below, but really just three candidates, viable candidates in the midfield. Is pretty impressive. Okay, let's go on upfield to attacking midfield. And here we have a definite candidate in Gildo, or Gildo Vilanculos, actually coded as a right winger, but it's been playing more on the left here. He does kind of cover the right winger position, or the right attacking midfield position, when that player is not there, but as I say, playing more on the left. He's been basically rotating with the two likely candidates, Witty and Clasio Bach. So three candidates there that will likely be selected. On the right attack, Jenny Katomo really occupies the position. He's rarely absent. He's a definite candidate here. As I said, Gildo fills in the few times he is absent. Here we do have a possible candidate with newcomer Angelo Thomas Cantolo. So has a chance of getting on the squad there. For central attack, they do use this position more than most teams do, but no definite candidate. But we do have a likely candidate in newcomer Pepo Santos. And I will mention the possible but unlikely veteran Domingos Palembe. Seemed to be off the team in 2025, didn't play any games, but we do know that in the November game he reappears. So we're going to investigate that in part 2 of our media cast. And finally, the last category, the forwards. Stanley Ratifo occupies this position just as much as Jenny does on the right attacking midfield, rarely absent and starts all the time, Stanley Ratifo. So he's a definite candidate, but we do have two possible candidates here, Faisal Bengal and Melki. Okay, so a pretty small squad there for Mozambique. Let's look at any big names who are off the squad. Well, we were going to put Domingos Palembe on the list because we thought when he didn't show up for any of the games in 2025 that he was moving into retirement. After all, he is 41 years old. But then we were surprised to see that he was called up for a game in November. So we're a bit uncertain of his status with the squad, and we'll investigate in part 2. So other than him, no big names off the squad during this period for Mozambique. And for injuries, no injuries to talk about either. So that's all good news for Mozambique. Just a quick note in the closing thoughts, and that's the interesting contrast between the big teams in this group, Ivory Coast and to a lesser extent Cameroon, compared to the smaller teams in this group, Gabon and Mozambique. Well, you having just looked at the players will know that Mozambique is a small squad. It's a very tight squad. Most of the players are starting all of the time. So they're not chopping and changing players. The same is true of Gabon. So a very tight squad that plays together all the time versus especially Ivory Coast, a team full of stars, big name players, but chopping and changing all the time, putting those players on the field or moving them around the field, and never the same team twice, really, with them, especially in the attack for Ivory Coast. Cameroon actually is a little better going into this campaign. They seem to have stabilized some of the positions a bit more, but it's really broadly an interesting contrast between the big teams with big names chopping and changing versus the tight squads of Gabon and Mozambique, a less kind of talent in terms of their club affiliations, but very tight, and that may give them an advantage, as we have seen in previous cups. Okay, it's time for us to move on to preview part 2, and we're going to produce part 2 when the preliminary squad and final squad has been named, when the selections are made, and we will emphasize any notable non-selections here, and then tell you about any surprise inclusions or new players that are put on the squad. We'll also update any injuries. That would be new injuries in the case of Mozambique. Any new injuries we'll tell you about, and the fun part of part 2 are predictions of the starters. So we hope you join us for that, and that's the end of part 1 of our look at Mozambique. We would like to thank Pixabay and Cold Fingers for the wonderful music used in this mediacast. The title of the piece is Eid Mubarak.